This podcast was recorded on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation.
Hello and welcome to The Real Story with Joe Hildebrand. I'm Joe Hildebrand and not Lidia Thorpe, and that is a good thing. We've got an absolutely huge show for you this week. We're going to get to the bottom of whether the PM is about to break another election promise, this time on negative gearing. Will he or won't he? I have the answer for you coming up. Plus, what is actually going on inside Lidia Thorpe's head? What is she trying to achieve? Plus, Donald Trump's amazing stint as a Maccas drive-through operative. This is probably the greatest part-time job in the history of humankind, and it has got the left in America absolutely flummoxed. They do not know what to do, and that's why I reckon he's going to win. All that and more coming up. But first up this week, let's just get right to it. I've finally calmed down. I've had my Becks and a lie down. And I'm ready to talk about Albo's $4.3 million real estate purchase. It's a beautiful home. In retrospect, he got it for a steal. He's living the Sydney dream. Nice little weekender on the Central Coast. Bought it for less than the previous owner paid for it. So he's, made out like a bandit. We should be celebrating him. We should be cheering him on. Instead, some mealy-mouthed people, sticks in the mud, the lot of them, have said that maybe you shouldn't be buying a giant clifftop mansion in the middle of a housing crisis. Well, poo-poo to them. What Scrooges. But the real story here is what is going to happen to the houses belonging to the rest of us. Okay? Albo's got his house, got it for a song. Good on him. Fantastic. That's great. Thank you, linesmen. Thank you, ball boys. What about the rest of us? What about our housing situation? Because one of the upshots of Albo making this purchase is that he came under renewed pressure to act on negative gearing. Now, negative gearing is what happens when you borrow money to make an investment, and then you can claim the interest on those borrowings as well as other expenses against your tax. Now, negative gearing was actually never meant to be for houses. Negative gearing was meant to be for investing in the stock market. It was meant to make the Australian economy stronger because it would encourage people to borrow money to invest in shares. That's good for the share market. The share market goes up. Everyone gets rich. We all have a party. Woohoo! And then some accountant figured out, you know what? If you buy a second house, that's an investment too. So if you borrow money to buy a second house or a third house or a fourth house, then you can actually claim the interest on the money you borrow against your tax. So you're paying less tax and you're getting your second house for cheaper than a first home buyer would get if they were buying it as their first house, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever in a market where you're trying to encourage first home buyers to get their own home and get the security and the financial future for their children that delivers. It's a terrible, terrible idea. However, the housing crisis has now gotten much, much worse than that. So in good news for negative gearing, the housing crisis is now so bad that we're not even worried about first home buyers like we used to. We're worried about people even being able to rent a house. We're desperately trying to get more houses, more homes onto the market, not just so that people can buy them, but so that people can rent them out, because people are struggling to even find a place to rent. That means they can't even get a roof over their heads, let alone think about actually owning their first property. And this is where negative gearing comes back in, because you can only claim negative gearing. You can only negatively gear the expenses associated with your property if it's an investment and if you're renting it. Because if you're living in it, it's not an investment and it doesn't count. But of course, if you are not living in it and it's your second, third or fourth house or whatever it may be, then it becomes an investment. So this encourages people not to become first homeowners, or not even to become homeowners at all, but to become landlords and to rent out property to renters. Because if there's no renter there, if you're not using that property as an investment and losing money on it, then you don't get to negative gear it. So axing negative gearing makes perfect sense in an environment where you're trying to get more people into the home ownership market and first home buyers a step on the bottom rung of the housing ladder. But it makes absolutely no sense if you're trying to get more renters into homes. It does the exact opposite. But because Albo was copping so much heat from his clifftop mansion. Sorry, it's definitely not a mansion. He told me himself. Because Albo's copping so much heat from this, and because they're under threat from the Greens on housing, because the Greens are just making stuff up, Labor's thinking, holy crap, we've got to just do something, or at least look like we're doing something. And now the PM's got this really bad look. And you know what? It's so last week, isn't it? No one seems to be outraged by it anymore. It was the end of the world a week ago, but now everything's kind of okay. Anyway, point being, they were so outraged by it that we had to move on negative gearing, restrict negative gearing, do something to stop negative gearing, to stop the Greens from nipping at our heels and coming at us from the rear or from the left, just so we could look like we're doing something, even though by actually doing that thing, we'd be making the crisis worse. Well, the good news is that I have it on very good authority that they're not going to do that. I have been told by very reliable sources that Labor is not going to go after negative gearing, precisely because it would make absolutely no sense, and the PM gets that. So where is all this talk about going after negative gearing coming from? Well, it's coming from some Treasury modelling of this suggestion. And who has commissioned the Treasury modelling? Look, I'm not a qualified economist. I'm not even a qualified political scientist. But I would probably hazard a guess that the person who commissioned the Treasury modelling was the Treasurer. So why is Jim Chalmers, who is a very sensible person, who actually technically sits to the right of Albo in the Labor Party and should be, you would think, more pro-aspirational, more supportive of middle Australia, people trying to get ahead in life rather than the usual kind of tax and spend of the left or the wealth redistribution that the left likes to hold so dear. Why is Jim Chalmers coming after it? Well, because, of course, negative gearing costs the Treasury money. And it's a Treasurer's job to collect as much revenue as they possibly can. They are just programmed that way. So anything that looks like there's money that should be coming into Treasury but isn't, they will just instinctively go after. Little fun fact for you. The Treasurer is actually in charge of money coming in to the government. Even though the Treasurer hands down a budget and says this is how much we're going to spend and this is how much we're going to spend, here and there and everywhere, it's actually the Finance Minister who's in charge of running a rule over all the spending. The Treasurer is the one who is responsible primarily for tax collection. And so anything that looks like a loophole, they are going to be all over like a cheap suit. And negative gearing is one hell of a loophole. It's evil, it's stupid, it's counterintuitive, it makes no sense whatsoever, except right now we need it more than ever. Meanwhile, in Australian politics, let's just do a quick welfare check on Lidia Thorpe. Lidia Thorpe is, of course, the former Greens senator who left the Greens because she opposed the Indigenous voice to Parliament, even though she was the Greens spokeswoman for Indigenous affairs and indeed, of course, Indigenous herself. But she didn't like the Indigenous voice to Parliament because it wasn't extreme or radical enough. And she's since been proving just how extreme and radical she is by doing things like raising her hand, the fist in the Senate to protest against Queen Elizabeth just kind of being there. Seemed to be quite celebratory when a bunch of people set fire to old Parliament House. Apparently that was colonialism burning or something like that. And she was at it again over the weekend when King Charles visited. She started screaming in the middle of his reception in the Great Hall of Parliament and shouting things like, "You're not my king and this is not your land and you are a genocidal maniac," or whatever. And then, of course, she got dragged out by the cops and it made headlines all over the world and absolutely nothing changed. And the benefit for Indigenous people in Australia was precisely zero, or arguably less than zero, because it probably lowered the reputation of genuine Indigenous activists, genuine Indigenous elders and community leaders, almost all of whom came out to roundly condemn Lidia Thorpe for once again dragging their cause through the mud and doing absolutely nothing but damage to the very cause that she purports to serve. So, what is Lidia Thorpe actually thinking? Well, the first question is actually a step back from that, which is Lidia Thorpe actually thinking? And I think there's probably about a 70% chance that she's just not thinking anything at all. Or maybe there is actually some kind of purpose behind it. is this Lidia Thorpe desperately trying to make herself relevant, or perhaps more specifically, just remind people she exists? What she's actually relevant to, I don't actually know. But just to say, hey, I'm here. Hi, everybody. I'm Lidia Thorpe. Remember me? I'm here, I'm loud, and I'm on the front page of the UK tabloids. Well, this is what she told the ABC the day after the protest.
I am there for one reason and one reason only, and it's not to make friends, it's not to get re-elected.
Which, of course, leads us to the very obvious conclusion that this is about her trying to get re-elected, right? Now, she's previously said that she's not going to go up for re-election, and there's a very, very good reason for that. Now, firstly, Lidia Thorpe was elected in 2022, but she was already in the Senate because she replaced leader Richard Di Natale in his seat in the Senate. And then she was put at the very top of the Victorian Greens Senate ticket. This is an absolute surefire win. You cannot lose in today's political climate if you are the number one Greens ticket holder on the Senate ticket. You definitely get in. So it's a massive gift that the party gave her. And of course, she gave them a massive FU in return when just a year or even less into her first term, she decided to betray the party and leave the Greens because of her opposition to The Voice. Again, she's just a wrecker, wrecked The Voice, wrecked the Greens, whatever. I don't really care so much about her wrecking the Greens, but The Voice I was kind of invested in. And then she goes and sits in Parliament, even though she was not elected as an independent, but she sits there as an independent, much like Senator Fatima Payman from the Labor Party. And the thing with the Senate, of course, is that you're elected for 6 years. Each term is 6 years. So she is sitting there collecting $250,000 a year on the taxpayer dime in the service of, you guessed it, His Majesty the King, until 2028. 2028. In a House of Parliament that the bloke she was screaming at and calling a genocidal maniac officially, technically presides over. She refuses to go anywhere. But at least she says she's not going to seek re-election. Well, why would that be? Well, the quota to get elected in Victoria in a normal half-Senate election, so half the senators are elected at a time, so 6 senators are elected from each state at a normal election. And so the quota is basically 100% divided by 6 plus 1. That sounds a bit sort of weird and mathematical. Basically, you've got 6 senators you've got to get elected. You've got many more than 6 candidates. So instead of just having 6, you've got 6 plus 1. So if you get 1/7 of the vote, basically, you are home and hosed, pretty much. The Greens pretty much got that. They got, for their ticket, above the line, the 2022 election, more than 500,000 votes. 500,000, 500,000, just shy of the official quota of about 545,000 votes. So they actually had to rely on a few little preferences. Tragically, the Labor Party may have contributed some of those preferences. Lidia Thorpe below the line as an incumbent senator, as a former MP for the Greens in Victoria, very high profile, put at the top of the ticket, replacing the leader in the Senate. Lidia Thorpe got just 40,000 votes, less than 10% of what the overall Greens vote was. And yet she sits there still in the Senate as though she had been elected just for herself. So if Lidia Thorpe is going to come close to getting re-elected, if she decides that actually she will give it a throw and changes her mind, she is sitting on a support base, as far as we know, of 40,000 people, some of whom may have actually been Green voters who just decided to vote below the line for Lidia because she was a nice Green way back then. So how does Lidia Thorpe build her profile, build her brand, and try desperately to attract more potential votes when she runs in the future? Well, she can't do it by actually constructing an argument. She can't do it by building a policy platform because she has neither of those. So she just does it by being loud and vocal and visible and making a scene and making a fuss and hoping that she just gets some crazy name recognition out there. So this is what occurred to me as I was watching Lidia Thorpe get dragged away by the police from yet another public event. She's just so out there, so wild, so unhinged, so uncontrolled, so madcap in the crazy things she screams from every public platform she can find, that she's completely unfit to be employed anywhere except the Australian Parliament. And of course, no episode would be complete without a quick check-in on, quite frankly, the greatest political phenomenon of the 21st century. And I'm calling it early, even in the first quarter. Donald Trump, extraordinary scenes. I would have written him off at least 3 times in this election campaign. He just keeps coming back. I said early on that this was Kamala Harris's election to lose. And boy, is she doing a good job of losing it. She just cannot string a sentence together. No one knows what she stands for. I received a text message from a former senior politician who now lives in the US who said that even in his very heavily Democratic state, no one seems to know what Kamala is on about, what she stands for, what her values are. She can't articulate any of her policies. She can't answer straight and simple questions. And he's predicting a massive Republican wave. So we'll see how that goes. It is so tight. It is so incredibly tight. No one can really call it. But what we do know is that Donald Trump is gaining ground while Kamala Harris appears to be slipping. So the momentum is with Donald Trump, and in those critical swing states, it's all about the swing states, of course, places like Pennsylvania, Trump is edging ahead. And remember, it doesn't matter if Kamala Harris wins the popular vote or not. If she does not win those swing states, especially if she doesn't win Pennsylvania, these are largely sort of Midwestern states, if she doesn't win these, then she cannot win the White House. And this is very important to know about the American political system. You've got the Electoral College, 538 votes, all divided up between the various states. It's not about who wins the overall popular vote. It's about who gets the most Electoral College votes. And that means that you can win a big state by 51% and take all their Electoral College votes, and you can win another state by 90% and you still only get all those Electoral College votes. It is winner takes all, and that is why you can get fewer votes than your opponent across the board. But if those votes are in the right places, you win the presidency. And that is exactly what happened when Trump won in 2016. And he is in an even better position, according to polls. And the methodology of the polls keeps getting tweaked to try and reflect the things that they missed the last time round. But he is in an even better position by just about every marker than he was in 2016. So why? I would suggest it is because of comments like these. You remember, of course, Trump's triumphal 15 minutes as a fast food worker when he operated the McDonald's drive-through and was handing out fries to people as very curiously pro-Trump supporters just happened to drive through there. Obviously, everyone's vetted their security concerns. So, everyone who came through the drive-through when he was serving would have had to been screened and cleared. But this went all around the world. It was absolutely huge. Where was it? Well, it was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Of course, that must-win state. It carries 19 electoral votes, more than any of the other major swing states that are really in contention. And this was the reaction on the notoriously anti-Trump and progressive MSNBC.
What is the logic behind this, going to a McDonald's? I mean, we know the guy likes Big Macs and filet of fish, and he's used the word love to describe the way he feels about the food there before. But what's this about?
There's no logic to it. It's a stunt.
And this is the thing. This is the level of political analysis and mainstream understanding of the elite East Coast and West Coast new progressive left. I say this as someone who was from the old progressive left, where it used to be about, workers, poor people. Remember them? These people cannot understand why someone trying to get the mainstream American working class vote would be at a drive-through Maccas in Pennsylvania, a state they need to win. They say, oh, it's just a stunt. You think? Yes, it's a stunt. It's a bloody good one. Some would say it's a cunning stunt. And that's why he's going to win. He's entertaining. He's fun. He's relatable. He actually knows how the McDonald's kitchen works instinctively, it would seem. Whereas these guys are all sitting around scratching their heads going, I don't understand. It's like McDonald's is a foreign planet to them. It's like the people who work there or go there are an alien species. And this is why Donald Trump, I think, is going to win. Because he is just relatable, whether you like him or not, whether you approve of everything he's done or not. And I guarantee that most people who vote for him will not have approved of everything he's done. And yet the left just keep pointing out, but he's done this, but he's done that. It's like, you know what? They knew it already and they're still voting for him. And now you got Joe Biden in his last kind of weird, soupy, opium den style hallucination is saying that Donald Trump should be locked up. Joe, trying to lock him up was how he got here in the first place. It was when you went after him that suddenly his poll numbers shot up. And now with just over a week to go, Uncle Joe's come out just to give him a little bump across the line. And that is why I think Donald Trump is going to win, because these people just never learn. They don't know the people who are voting for Donald Trump. They don't know who they are, what they are like. They have no connection with them. They have no relatability to them. They are, to them, a foreign species. They are like an alien to them. And for those people in Middle America, the new left is just as alien to them. Now, I promised you when we started this show that I would bring you stories, facts, information, vital information that you won't get anywhere else. And I'm pretty sure we're fulfilling that brief today. Today, in case you didn't know it, in case you've been living under a rock, in case your friends aren't all talking about it down at the local pub, today is World Edible Insects Day. Now, this has been put forward by experts, activists, various people smarter than you and I who know what's good for us, as a solution to climate change. So there's actually a real scientific sort of motivation for people to say, you have to eat bugs. Because cows, we eat too much meat apparently, and cows and other livestock produce methane, and that's very bad for the environment. So again, this has led to calls for humans to eat insects, and this has led to World Edible Insects Day. I'm not sure if this is the best argument. I'm not sure if, just from a purely PR perspective, I'm not questioning the science, but from a just from a comms kind of sell point, I'm not sure if this is the flag we should be running up the pole. But I know nothing. And so I've brought in, as our special guest this week, Skye Blackburn, an entomologist and the founder of Circle Harvest, which is basically a front for bug eaters. And she joins me in the studio right now. Skye, welcome to The Real Story. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am nervous.
I'm very excited
It's
today.
how I know you're
today's
excited.
World
You're very
Edible Insect Day.
It is World Edible Insect Day. So let's get our what we call in grammar our number straight. Is it singular or plural? World Edible Insects or World Edible Insect?
Insect Day.
So it's just one insect.
Well, if you eat one insect, then you're participating, right?
So just eat one insect
Just
for the
eat one
world.
insect today. You
And-
don't even have to eat an insect today. You just need to talk about eating insects today. Share that idea with your friends.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to take you up on that and talk about eating insects today. Just talk us through the rationale for World Edible Insect Day.
Well, on World Edible Insect Day, we just kind of...
Like, I've heard the phrase World Edible Insect Day like 10 times already, which is 10 times more than I've
you
heard in
would
my
have
entire
ever.
life. Anyway, here we are. Sorry, continue.
We really want to shine an light on the importance of insects in our future food system. So that might be with edible insects, that might be as a source of animal feed, pet food as well. We can use them for food waste management. We can use them in pharmaceuticals. We can use them to make bioplastics. So there's lots of different things that we can use
But
insects
it's not
for.
World Food Management Insect Day. It's not
Well,
World Waste Management
World
Insect. It's
Edible
World
Insect
Edible
Day is
Insect
very
Day. You are
catchy.
well. It's certainly got my attention.
We've said it lots of times already. So,
And so this is basically because eating meat is bad for the environment.
well, it's
and
not
therefore-
necessarily bad for the environment,
Right.
but eating insects is better for the environment. And within the next
Oh, nice
25
positive spin.
years,
Yes.
yeah, within the next 25 years, if we keep producing food the way that we do at the moment, we won't have enough food to feed our growing population. So scientists like myself look at different ways of producing food using less natural resources. So things like algae and seaweed, cellular agriculture, eating more plant-based diets, and edible insects.
And you're an entomologist. That is science speak for someone who studies insects.
I'm that bug lady.
Yeah, that bug lady. Don't be like that. That's what my kids call my wife. So what sort of insects are we talking about eating, and how are we talking about eating them?
Well, there's over 2,000 kinds of recorded species of edible insects in the world, but in Australia we
That's
have...
why it should be World Insects Day.
Insects
I
Day.
feel like just singling out one insect is unfair to that insect. It's like, what, me?
Why
What about all the
not?
other guys? Eat them. There's 1,999 other species out there. What about, why are you... Anyway, sorry, continue.
So in Australia, we have 3 species that are approved for human consumption. So those are crickets and 2 species of mealworms. So those are the ones that we normally farm on a really big scale for people to eat.
So, crickets and mealworms.
Mealworms, yeah. So mealworm has a silly name. It's not really a worm. It's actually like the larva
Yeah.
of a beetle.
Oh, that's worse. That's
not worse.
Don't worry, guys. You're not eating worms. It's the larva of a beetle.
That is much more acceptable than a worm.
That's
A
like-
worm's in the dirt.
Yeah, the larva of a beetle's in a beetle.
It is a beetle.
What? It is a beetle. That's right. And it's a young beetle. You're eating children.
You're eating baby beetles. That's
Baby
right.
beetles. Oh, my God. It's like eating a young Paul McCartney. It's inhumane. Okay. And how do we eat these things? Because I presume that in their natural state, they would not be too appetizing.
Well, when we think about eating a steak, we don't call it cow anymore. It doesn't really look like a cow, right? So when we're moving forward with the future of food and we've got insects, they still are called insects, but what we actually do is we grind them into a powder, or we have them in a paste or an oil, and we use it to enrich familiar foods that you eat all the time anyway. So it's more of an invisible nutrient boost.
And yet you've brought in a sort of sample here. One is something that looks like kind of corn chips. We'll see if we can hold up the camera here. It looks like corn chips, crunches like corn chips, and yet it says on the front, cricket protein corn chips. Like, wouldn't it just be better if you just didn't tell people that this has bugs in it?
No, that's the unique selling point. People love this. Why would you not tell people?
People are not like me, are they? Okay, well, look, I don't know if you know this guy, but talent doesn't taste test. So we've brought in Xander here, our resident millennial guinea pig, who is going to try this sample of fine foods that you've brought in and give it the
Thumbs up or the thumbs
two
down?
thumbs up, or in the case of a bug, the 6 thumbs up, or not.
Well, they don't have thumbs, so let's just call it legs.
Okay, see, the entomologist.
We don't
difference
want to be
between you and
teaching
me.
the children the wrong thing.
No, that's right. That's right. Sorry, I apologise. I defamed bugs for not having opposable digits. Okay, Xander, how are you feeling at the moment?
I'm kind of questioning why I said yes to this now.
Yes.
I think producer Ricardo caught me in a happy mood this morning. And
Did you just say, come into the studio? We'd love to try you out on the
Do you want to
mic.
eat some bugs? And I went, sure.
Yeah, right. Okay, so you knew that there were bugs literally
Yeah,
on the menu.
But I'd forgot throughout the day that I'd said yes. So now we're
Right.
here and the heart palpitations are happening.
Yes, I know. That's how I
Yeah.
feel just by being middle-aged.
Yeah,
You've got
yeah.
your whole life ahead of you and you're a bug eater now. Well, not quite. Have you had lunch yet?
You have.
Right. What'd you have for lunch? Just
I had a delicious steak sandwich.
fantastic.
Yeah.
See, that is...
No bugs. on
That
it.
is my
Well,
kind of...
actually, you've already eaten bugs then if you had a steak sandwich, because
Oh.
most of the foods that we eat already have bugs in them. So the average
What?
person eats about 1/4 of a kilo of bugs in things like wheat. So you had bread there, right?
Oh,
if
no.
you're eating any kind of like chips with that, then the chips are probably going to have.
how do they have
parts of
bugs in them?
insects. So fruits and vegetables and grains are all grown outside, right? So for instance, if we're farming wheat, then the harvester comes, harvests all the wheat, but the bugs are in there as well. So those are ground up with that. So
How do you
Phrasing.
feel?
I unknowingly ate bugs.
That's right. How do you feel about your steak sandwich now, Xander?
It's still down there.
cow and insect sandwich. That's
Yeah.
what we
So
had
this
today.
is Sky's genius. She's just ruined all food for everybody now, so we might as well eat bugs, given that we've been doing it all along. already. Okay, so Xander had a steak sandwich for lunch, so he needs to carbon offset that. What have you got?
I think the easiest thing to try would be the cricket protein corn chips because you kind of know what a chip should taste like, you know what the texture should be. So it'd be really easy for you to determine if there's like a buggy kind of flavour in there.
Okay.
Any guac with this?
It's just millennials. They're so demanding, aren't they?
Those
Just,
are barbecue flavoured,
Okay.
so they already have flavouring on them.
I'm going to do some ASMR to the mic.
I just got shivers on the back of my neck.
I can't taste bug, but I'm not sure what bug tastes like. But it just tastes like a corn chip, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's the point. But each bag of those corn chips, if you've got a little 50-gram bag, that'll have as much protein as an egg. It's got heaps of your vitamin B12, calcium, iron, all your amino acids for the day as well. So instead of snacking on, you know, your regular bag of corn chips, that's really just hollow calories, you can kind of swap that for a bag of cricket chips and you're feeding your body, you're feeding your brain.
So the bug chips are actually better for you than real chips.
Yeah,
and
definitely,
also
because they've got
good for
nutrition
the
in them.
environment. Okay. Let's go to your next little platter there. Now,
So
these look
next,
deceptively...
We might go something sweet. So I've got some cookies. So
Ooh.
these are chocolate chip cookies that are made using the cricket protein powder. And each one of those cookies will have about 5 grams of protein in it.
Okay.
But it's still got all the butter and sugar and all the things that you like in a cookie. So
It looks like a normal cookie. Like,
It does,
there's
doesn't
nothing
it?
about it right now that is suggesting that there are crickets.
no legs, wings, antennas.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Let's give it a go. Okay. Just tastes like a normal cookie.
You know, can you teach my children to eat with their mouth closed? Because that is very, very... No, that is very civilized. So
It's
can you
good.
taste
I have
any-
no complaints, no bugginess. It's just a normal cookie you'd buy from the shops.
And that's the
Okay.
point.
Well, look, I feel like, Sky, we've been privileged to be part of a profound human experiment here today on World Edible Insect Day. And not insects, just insect. It could be you, grasshopper. Could be anyone.
Watch out.
And Xander, thank you so much for putting your body on the line. Would you like to take a little doggy bag or a buggy bag?
I might actually.
you?
I'll take a buggy bag full, yeah.
I might put a spring in the step for the rest of the day.
Look, as soon as you said protein, I was like, this is great for the gym. So
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yep, certainly creating a lot of buzz. I'm so sorry. And Sky, it's not news, as we both know, unless there's a local angle. And World Edible Insect Day is coming to Australia, and there is actually going to be a dinner put on by the Powerhouse Museum in Parramatta in Western Sydney at the Fancy Misk restaurant, where special guests will be gathering and eating bugs.
Yeah, so we've actually got a special dinner planned. We're doing a restaurant takeover of Misk in Parramatta and we're bugifying their menu. So we've got a beautiful selection of different kinds of edible insect dishes and there's still tickets available through the Powerhouse Producers website.
Sky, Blackburn, Xander, hero among men, thank you very much for joining us on The Real Story.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all we have time for this week. Another bumper episode. Thank you very much for joining us. If you've got any feedback at all, you can always send us an email at therealstory@novapodcasts.com.au, or you can slide into my DMs on Insta. I'm at Joe_Hildebrand. If you like what you've heard, just give us a little like. You can write a little review. I believe the algorithm only accepts 5 stars. Just so you know, I wouldn't even try anything else. Of course, you can always catch my columns in the Daily Telegraph and other news mastheads right around the country every Monday and Saturday. And I'll see you all next week.